Lesson 8, Mastering Difficult Conversations. In the previous lesson, we learned how to reframe our automatic thoughts so we can control our emotions rather than letting our emotions control us. In this lesson, we're going to equip you with skills to communicate effectively in difficult conversations. You'll learn a master strategy for effective communication, along with techniques that will allow you to listen to others in a way that makes them feel heard, communicate your views in a manner that will likely be well received by others, de-escalate tricky conversations when they start to go off the rails. We'll practice applying these techniques in a simulated conversation that will resemble one you may encounter in your daily life. The conversational tactics we'll cover in this lesson build on principles from earlier in the program. Before we get started, let's recap some key takeaways. Lesson 1, explore the inner workings of the mind. When you notice that your elephant, your automatic thinking, is in charge, you can take the reins. Step 1, detect when your elephant might be in control. Step 2, pause to give your rider time to catch up. And Step 3, correct your elephant's missteps. Lesson 2, uncover the roots of our differences. Your moral worldview is one of many ways of seeing the world. Two good, well-intentioned people can disagree on important issues. All of us share the same 6 moral values, we just emphasize them in different ways: care, fairness, liberty, loyalty, authority, and sanctity. Lesson 3, cultivate intellectual humility. If we cultivate intellectual humility and an explorer mindset, we can view mistakes and disagreements as opportunities for growth and learning. We want to have the growth mindset where we understand that we can learn and grow and change our skills and abilities with hard work and good coaching. Lesson 4, welcome diverse perspectives. Speaking to people who see things differently than us helps us fill in our blind spots, discover new ideas, make wiser decisions, improve our communication skills, and it helps us build diverse coalitions with allies to solve problems and prevent issues that we care about. Lesson 5 is about exploring other worldviews. We can uncover the values and life experiences that shape other people's beliefs and find common ground despite our differences. We might have the same goal in mind, just different strategies to achieve that goal. Lesson 6, challenge the culture of contempt. Contempt, remember, is anger mixed with disgust. We can embrace clumsy conversations and forgive people's mistakes instead of reacting with shame and contempt. Lesson 7, manage emotions in difficult conversations. We can recognize that our interpretation of events, rather than the events themselves, determines how we feel. This empowers us to shape our interpretations and gain control in difficult conversations. We can have an automatic thought that may be unpleasant and may be as a result of distorted thinking, like mind traps and cognitive distortions, like catastrophizing, black and white thinking, etc. Then we can take that automatic thought and we can reframe it, look at it in a different way. Now, let's move on and consider why it's valuable to develop a strategy for effective communication. Many of us enter into difficult conversations without a plan, but given what we know about the rider and the elephant, we can understand why this is short-sighted. If we don't have a plan, we'll likely have to act on impulse, which means our elephant, our automatic thinking, will be in charge. That's a problem because our elephant often leads us astray. It can cause us to behave in ways that feel good in the moment, but actually limit our ability to achieve our goals. Here's how this tends to play out. We're talking to someone about an issue we care about, and they say something that we strongly disagree with. This instantly triggers a visceral response from our elephant. We feel a powerful automatic urge to give the other person a piece of our mind. We may lash out or tell them off. In the moment, this response feels good. We also feel morally justified because we feel certain the other person is wrong. Focus on the other person's elephant. There's a certain principle we learned earlier in the program that we'll put into practice now. You need to appeal to someone's elephant before you can move their rider. Think back to an unproductive argument you've had. You may have come armed with rock-solid facts to prove your point, but no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't get through to the other person. Most of us have had this experience, and it can be infuriating. If someone is deeply and intuitively opposed to our point of view, it's almost as if an impenetrable wall comes up. Our facts and evidence bounce right off of them. In order to break down that wall and get through to people, we need to appeal to their elephant. When you reach someone on an emotional level, the wall will come down and their rider, their reasoning side, will be much more receptive to your argument. That's why our master strategy for effective communication is to focus on the other person's elephant. As human beings, we have a natural urge to reciprocate. If we enter into a conversation like a warrior entering battle, the other person is likely to copy our approach and be aggressive back. But here's the interesting thing. If we take the opposite approach and treat people with unwavering kindness and respect, they'll usually return the favor. They're also more likely to lower their guard and be more open to your views. This means we have the power to set the tone in the conversation. To prevent conversations from descending into futile arguments, we need to keep our own elephants in check and make the other person's elephant feel good. Instead of trying to win or look smart or satisfy our ego, put the other person's ego first. We're not saying your views personally don't matter. Your views are important and you should be true to your convictions. This is not about modifying or misrepresenting your personal beliefs. It's about changing the way you approach a conversation. If you only focus on winning the argument or trying to look smart, you're unlikely to persuade others. But if you focus on their elephant, you will be a lot more effective. There's another reason for this approach too. When we follow our elephant's impulses during a difficult conversation, we tend to express our view the way we'd want to hear it if someone else was speaking to us. We don't think about how our words are received by the other person's elephant. We might even forget that they could have a different moral worldview from us, and that what sounds persuasive to our elephant could completely sound different to theirs. If we want the other person to care about what we're saying, and especially if we want them to consider our viewpoint, we need to tailor our message to be well received by the other person's elephant. When we do this, we can maximize our chance of making progress on the issues we care about. To summarize, what does focusing on the other person's elephant help us do? Write down one, two, or all three of the following. To set the tone so that the other person will treat us how we'd like to be treated, to make choices that will feel good in the heat of the moment, and or to ensure our message will be well received by the other person. Pause the video if you need to. Correct. Throughout this lesson, we'll teach you how to focus on the other person's elephant. We'll break the strategy into 3 steps you can use in any conversation. Establish your goals for the conversation, listen to understand the other person's elephant, and speak to their elephant. For each step, we'll teach you conversational strategies and give you an opportunity to practice on a sensitive topic. To get started, we'd like to hear where you'd stand on the topic at the center of this hypothetical scenario. Imagine that your college you plan to attend announces that it's considering starting a new program. It plans to offer free workshops to help women develop their public speaking skills. Do you think it would be a good idea for the college you hope to attend to offer these free women-only workshops? Absolutely not, 0%. Absolutely, 100%, 50% in the middle, some other percentage. It's up to you. Make your selection now. Thanks for sharing. Now imagine you're having lunch with a group of classmates. Your friend Alex brings up the topic of this program. Alex shares his view. I'm glad that a college is only offering these workshops to women. This program should have started years ago. You tense up, knowing that you disagree with Alex's point of view. You might have an urge to avoid this conversation altogether by changing topics, but you're also curious about why Alex believes what he believes. Let's consider how we set ourselves up for success in this potentially difficult conversation. Which of these seem like a better way to prepare yourself for a difficult conversation? Write down one of the following. Reflect on what you would like to accomplish in this conversation, or clear your head of thoughts so you can improvise and be in the moment during your upcoming conversation. Write down one of the following now. Step 1. Establish your goal. Good thinking. Before you dive into difficult conversations, it's valuable to establish your goal for the discussion. This involves asking yourself, what do I really want to get out of this conversation? For instance, you might simply be curious about the why behind the other person's point of view, or maybe you want to try to bring them around to understanding your point of view. Knowing what you really want can help you keep the conversation on track. If things start to get messy in the midst of a disagreement, you can always think back to your goals and refocus on what really matters to you. Which of the following goals would you like to aim for in this conversation with Alex? Remember, you were curious about why Alex disagrees with you about a program which will offer free public speaking workshops for women only. Write down one of the following. I'd like to make sense of why he feels this way. I'd like to persuade him to adopt my viewpoint. Or I'd like to practice my communication skills to prepare for future conversations. Write down 1, 2, or all 3 of the following, depending on your perspective. Do that now. Thanks for sharing. Let's say Alex is open to having a discussion about this program. You've decided, I'd like to make sense of why he feels this way. Now you're ready to focus on the second step of effective communication. Step 2, listen to understand the other person's elephant. It's important to keep in mind that people will respond differently to the same language because their reactions are driven by their elephants. While your message may be very compelling to one person, it could really alienate someone else. That's why it's crucial to craft a message that is most likely to be well received by the specific audience you're addressing. To present your ideas in a way that will resonate with someone's elephant, you're going to need to gather some vital information about them. We can do this by listening carefully to what they reveal about themselves. Before we get started, we're curious to hear, which of the following images do you associate with being a good listener? The first or the second? Write down one of the following. Many of us think being a good listener means staying quiet and letting the other person talk, but this is a common misperception. Think about how you would feel if you shared something deeply personal and the other person listened in complete silence. Now imagine how you would feel if the other person listened closely and then responded with a series of thoughtful follow-up questions asking you to expand on what you just said. Which type of listener would make you feel more heard? The one who sat in silence or the one who asked thoughtful follow-up questions? Write your selection down now. Active listening. Most people agree that yes, the one who asks thoughtful follow-up questions will make you feel more heard. Staying silent and the other person talk is one way of listening, but it's not always the best option. Active listening makes other people feel heard and appreciated. This involves thoughtfully considering what someone else is saying and then responding with follow-up questions and observations. First, active listening sets the tone for a conversation to be an open, honest, and mutually respectful one. By paying close attention and showing curiosity about the other person's point of view, we demonstrate that we are approaching disagreements as an explorer rather than a warrior. When we shift into an explorer mindset, we signal to the other person's elephant that it's safe for them to shift as well. Instead of responding with attacks or by getting defensive, they'll likely let their guard down. They'll also likely treat us with respect when we share our own views. Second, active listening helps us learn about our conversation partners so we can speak to their elephant. To craft a message that will be well received by Alex's elephant in particular, you'll need to get a sense of which core beliefs and values shape Alex's thinking about the issue. What could you do to learn more about why Alex thinks it's a good idea to offer these women-only workshops? Could you point out a flaw in his reasoning and see how he responds? Or ask him a question that invites him to explain his view in greater detail? Make your selection now. Asking non-judgmental follow-up questions. Back in Lesson 5, you learned how to uncover what lies beneath people's viewpoints when they disagree with us. We introduced the 5 W's, 5 questions that can help us learn more about the other person's point of view. Who in your life most influenced the way you think about this issue? What life experiences led you to develop this view? Where does this issue play out in your life? When does your view apply? Are there any exceptions? I'm curious, why is this issue important to you? Asking these non-judgmental questions is a powerful way to gather information and put the other person at ease. These questions don't criticize the other person, and they signal that you're sincerely interested in learning more about their point of view. We'll contrast 2 different questions we could ask Alice. First, imagine yourself asking Alex, does it bother you that this program insults women by sending the message that they can't succeed in competitive industries without getting special treatment? This judgmental question accuses Alex based on assumptions about why he believes what he believes. He's likely to start feeling defensive instead of feeling comfortable opening up to you further. And remember, people often associate their views with their own self, and so when they start getting defensive, they're literally feeling that they have to defend their very self, their very life. You could ask Alex instead, thanks for sharing your view. I'm curious to understand, why do you feel this way about women-only workshops? Beginning with, thanks for sharing your view, indicates that you appreciate what Alex has to offer even if you disagree. The follow-up question, why do you feel this way about women-only workshops, is non-judgmental. It doesn't express disapproval and simply offers him an opportunity to share more about his position and helps you understand his view. By expressing appreciation and demonstrating curiosity, you set a positive tone for the conversation. This may make Alex more receptive to your view once you share it. Let's imagine you've just asked Alex this non-judgmental question. When he responds, there's something you can do to make sure you've understood him correctly. Paraphrasing for clarity. To make people feel truly heard, you can check that you've understood them by paraphrasing their view back to them. For this to be effective, you should offer an accurate and non-judgmental summary of what they've just expressed. This means sticking to conclusions you can safely draw from the words they use to express themselves. You can do this by using phrases like, so what you're saying is, or to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you believe, and then summarizing their point of view in your own words. After paraphrasing, you can ask, is that correct? This gives the other person a chance to respond, either to confirm your summary was accurate or to clear up any misunderstandings. Let's try this out. Imagine Alex answered your non-judgmental question by saying, it's important that we offer everyone an equal opportunity to succeed at getting good jobs. That's why I think it's only fair to extend extra help to women, since harmful gender stereotypes have historically held women back from rising in the rank of competitive industries. Which of the following would be an accurate paraphrase of what Alex said? Write down one of the following. So your view is that women should now get chosen over men in competitive industries because men had an advantage over women in the past? Or, so what you're saying is that offering extra help to women will compensate for gender stereotypes that have kept men and women from having equal opportunities to succeed in the workplace. Great job. Paraphrasing is an incredibly useful tool to make sure you and your conversation partner are on the same page as you move forward with your discussion. Let's imagine you've just asked Alex, so what you're saying is offering extra help to women will compensate for gender stereotypes that have kept men and women from having equal opportunities to succeed in the workplace. Is that correct? Alex nods his head in agreement. What's something productive you could do with the information he just gave you? Write down one of the following. Try to understand what's leading him to hold his view. Immediately explain to Alex why he's wrong to believe this. Or start explaining your own view so he's not dominating the conversation. Write down one of the following now. That's right. With the first one, try to understand what's leading him to hold his view. That's a great tactic. In the words of Dale Carnegie, criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Remember, effective communication requires that we set our egos aside and focus on winning over the other person's elephant, not necessarily winning the argument. Let's see what else we can do to really understand the other person's elephant. In Lesson 5, we learned an explorer tactic that can help us understand why people feel how they do about an issue. If we take the time to decipher which moral foundations seem to be underpinning Alex's stance on women-only workshops, we can think carefully about how to respond in a way that will resonate with his elephant. Alex said, it's important that we offer everyone an equal opportunity to succeed at getting good jobs. That's why I think it's only fair to extend extra help to women, since harmful gender stereotypes have historically held women back from rising in the ranks of competitive industries. What foundation or foundations is Alex relying on in his argument for women-only workshops? Care, fairness, liberty, loyalty, authority, and/or sanctity. Write down one or more than one of the following foundations that you think Alex is using to rely on his argument in this line here for women-only workshops. Do that now. Great job. Speaking about allowing everyone an equal opportunity to succeed indicates that Alex thinks fairness and opportunities for advancement is essential. Also, his mention of harmful gender stereotypes that have held women back from achieving success shows care for women, specifically in support of women's ability to excel in any career. Now that we've gathered more information about Alex's view and why he believes what he believes, we're in a much better position to communicate our views to him. Before moving on to the next step, let's briefly review what we've learned so far. To recap, here are techniques we can use while listening to understand the other person's elephant. Ask non-judgmental follow-up questions to learn more about the other person without making them feel defensive. Paraphrase what the other person said to show that you care about understanding them. Decode their moral foundations to learn how to tailor your message to their elephant. Each of these techniques focuses on the other person's elephant. They make the other person more receptive to our message and provide the insight we need to reach them on an emotional, intuitive level. Now that we've done this, we're ready to move on to the next step. Step 3. Speaking to the other person's elephant. The techniques we'll learn to communicate our view make use of the life-changing power of intellectual humility. We discussed how embracing the possibility of being wrong and owning up to our own mistakes can transform the way we approach conversations. When we admit we could be wrong, all the energy we may have spent trying to protect our ego can instead be used productively to learn new things that help us grow. It turns out that approaching conversations with intellectual humility also helps win over the other person's elephant. Let's see how this works with Alex. Before you share your view, remind yourself of your goal for this conversation. You said, I'd like to make sense of why he feels this way. Now that you have your goal in mind, you can think about how to best present your point of view about your college's proposal to offer women-only workshops. Let's compare two ways you could explain your view to Alex. Option A, everyone who knows anything thinks it's a bad idea to single out women in this way. This would reinforce the narrative that women need special treatment to compete successfully with men, on top of discriminating against non-binary people. It's a complete mystery how anyone intelligent could think otherwise. Or option B. Based on what I've learned so far about gender inequality in the workplace, my impression is that women-only workshops reinforce the narrative that women need special treatment to compete successfully with men. I also think this approach unfairly discriminates against non-binary people. I understand that plenty of well-informed people think these workshops are fair because they help to level the playing field between men and women, but I'd like to explain why giving special treatment to women does more harm than good. Do you think that Alex will be more receptive to the message of option A or option B? Make your selection now. Right, option B is a much more promising approach than option A. Let's break down why that's the case. Remind yourself of option B. This approach follows the crucial principle that in order to move the rider, we must move the elephant first. It can be tempting to begin to laying out all the facts that support your view, but we need to draw people's elephant over to us before we can get their rider's attention. We first need to appeal to their emotional and intuitive side. Let's dive into some more specific conversational techniques that make this approach effective. Speaking with humility. Admitting that plenty of well-informed people see an issue differently than you do shows respect for the people with whom you disagree instead of shaming them or insulting their intelligence. This fits into our strategy of putting the other person's ego first. This is an example of a technique we learned back in lesson 3, speaking with humility. That means choosing a language that indicates we're expressing our own opinions and beliefs rather than stating irrefutable facts. We learned 2 important techniques to speak with humility. Speak for yourself only. By speaking in the first person, using phrases such as, I think, my impression is, from my point of view, you'll make it clear that you're sharing how things look from your perspective, not how things definitely are objectively. Own your uncertainty. If you choose words and phrases that express and moderate certainty, like maybe, it's possible that, it could be, it might be, it seems like, and so on, you'll demonstrate that you're aware your knowledge is limited and that you could be mistaken. Finessing your language with these tactics shows your conversational partner that you don't think your opinion is the only acceptable viewpoint, rather acknowledging that you could be wrong and you're open to changing your mind if you're learning from other people. Let's do a little thought experiment to see the value of speaking with humility. Imagine you read an article starting with the sentence, everyone who's remotely intelligent knows for a fact that women-only workshops are the only acceptable way to combat gender inequality in the workplace. Would you be willing to keep reading about this author's point of view? 0%, not at all. Or 100%, yes, definitely. 50% in the middle, or something else. Make your choice now. Good for you. After all, there's a lot we can gain from taking in a perspective that differs from our own. A lot of people would be turned off by this author's claim that everybody who's remotely intelligent just so happens to adopt their point of view about women-only workshops. This person doesn't seem willing to accept that smart, thoughtful people could have good responses to disagree. Trying to speak for everyone and state your opinions as facts tends to backfire. Instead of seeming authoritative, you're likely to seem arrogant, and you might undermine your credibility and turn people off as a result. In contrast, speaking with humility makes it more likely that you'll be able to win over the other person's elephant. To be clear, you should still communicate your views, but you can adjust your language to increase the likelihood that your message will resonate with others. Is there such a thing as speaking with too much humility? Yes! Sometimes people are so afraid of being direct with their views that they downplay the importance of what they're saying. For example, they might say things like, I know this isn't a big deal, but, or, I think, but I don't really know what I'm talking about. When you completely undermine the importance of your message, it's likely other people won't take you seriously. Remember back in lesson 4 when we learned that we can hold beliefs with different degrees of certainty? When we speak with humility, we're indicating that we aren't 100% certain we are correct. But we don't have to go to the other extreme and suggest that we're 0% committed to what we're saying either. The trick is to communicate using language that strikes a balance between the 2 extremes. We can indicate what we truly mean, what we say, without being overconfident in the truth of our views. Now let's imagine we've begun communicating our viewpoint to Alex using the more intellectually humble opener. What else could you do to speak to Alex's elephant in particular? Write down one of the following. Apply my knowledge about his moral foundations. Explain my point of view in words that express my values. Or if you agree with both, write both. Do that now. Using language that resonates with their elephant. You may feel compelled to speak in the kind of heartfelt language you resonate with your elephant, and that impulse is onto something. You should express your beliefs and do so authentically. But if we really want to make sure our message lands with the other person, we need to figure out how our wording resonates with Alex's elephant, based on what we know about his moral foundations. When we decoded Alex's language, we determined from his view on women-only workshops to run the issues of fairness and care most prominently. Which of these options would communicate your stance on women-only workshops in language related to fairness and care? You can use the image here as a cheat sheet to remember the values associated with the 6 moral foundations. Write down one of the following. It's so important to treat each other as equals instead of treating people differently just because of their gender. If we ensure that men, women, and non-binary people are all offered the same opportunities for public speaking training, we can help each individual to believe in their ability to succeed in the workplace on their own merits. Option 2. It's our duty as Americans to treat each other as equals. What sets our nation apart from many others is that we uphold the tradition of allowing everyone an equal chance to lift themselves up to achieve the American dream through hard work. Which of these options would communicate your stance on women-only workshops and language related to fairness and care? Make your choice now. Let's take another look at this message for good measure. It's so important to treat each other as equals, instead of treating people differently just because of their gender. If we ensure that men, women, and non-binary people are all offered the same opportunities for public speaking training, we can help each individual to believe in their ability to succeed in the workplace on their own merits. This way of presenting the case against women-only workshops emphasizes fairness by speaking about the value of treating each other as equals and offering everyone the same opportunities. It also indicates that giving people the same opportunities is a way of showing care for each other. It helps each individual to develop the self-esteem to do their best work. Let's say that you used your understanding of Alex's elephant, specifically your awareness that fairness and care are important to him, to express your view using this message, which you expect will resonate with his elephant. Alex replies, I get what you're saying, but I'm still not convinced. The way I see it, the career boost women would get from receiving this extra training in public speaking is really valuable. It outweighs any harm that might be caused by sending that message that women need extra help in order to succeed. Has Alex drawn your attention to something you haven't considered before? Write down yes or no. Congratulations, you've just added to your understanding of the complexities of the issue. Let's think strategically about what would be productive in the next steps of the conversations. Remember, your goal was to make sense of why he feels that way. Given what you hope to accomplish, how do you think you should start your next reply to Alex? Write down one of the following. Let me explain my point of view again, since you don't seem to be getting what I'm saying. I guess there's no convincing you then. I hear what you're saying, Alex. No matter what goal we set for a conversation, we're more likely to achieve it if we remember to put the other person's ego first. 3 simple words, I hear you, might be all it takes to assure the other person that you genuinely care about what they're saying. This will satisfy their need to feel heard, even if you disagree with them. There are a couple of different ways we can acknowledge the other person's point of view, depending on how the conversation has gone so far. If you've changed your mind as a result of something the other person has said, or if you recognize that you've made a mistake, we strongly recommend you tell them so. One of the things that people most enjoy hearing are these simple words, you're right. It's a rare gift to hear these words, since most people find it really difficult to admit that the other person might be right. But if you have the confidence to admit you've changed your mind, the other person will be deeply appreciative, and they'll be more likely to admit when they're wrong. And this has happened to me, by the way, on a very important issue for our state. I think it's issue 1. Right now, the issue of abortion. My view on that was changed by some of my experiences and some of the people that I talked with about the issue. All right, if someone raises a thoughtful critique of your view you shared or brings your attention to something you hadn't thought of before, you don't have to pretend otherwise or make a stronger case for your point of view. That's because constructive disagreements aren't zero-sum, where one person wins and the other loses. Instead, they're opportunities for both people to learn and grow from the experience. As the philosopher... Ooh, thank you. I am on recording something, but that's okay.
Oh.
This is how.
These are the Halloween ones that are left. Those are like full spiders.
Oh, I love this. I gotta take this guy.
Okay,
It's so
perfect.
cool.
And then we have some napkins for you too.
Oh, you ladies are so sweet. Thank you.
Have a good day.
I
Now you have to
will,
recycle.
too. Yeah, no, that's all right. Happy Halloween. See you later. As the philosopher John Sachs says, knowledge, inspiration, vision, these are the things that can be shared without loss. Those who share them with others add to spiritual wealth of a community without losing any of their own. It's not worth to pretend they've made good points or to give them false compliments. If we're insincere in praising other people, they may pick up on it and suspect we're trying to be manipulative, which might make matters worse than if we didn't say anything. In this scenario, you can still show appreciation for their contribution to the conversation. You can thank them for sharing their views and tell them how glad you are they would be willing to have an open and honest conversation. At some point, you and your partner might actually have discovered points of agreement on the topic. In that case, you can use another technique to make sure your partner feels heard. Back in Lesson 5, we learned about short bridges and long bridges. When we focus on all the ways we disagree with someone, the distance between us may seem enormous. But when we acknowledge all the things we already agree about, the bridge between us instantly gets shorter. With those small gestures of agreement, we establish goodwill with our partner and greatly improve the nature of the conversation. Let's try finding some points of agreement in your conversation with Alex. Can you think of something Alex said about women-only workshops that you both agree on? Write either yes or no. That's great. If you acknowledge this point of agreement in your conversation, the bridge between the two of you feels easier to cross. Let's review the techniques we used in step 3 of effective communication, speaking to the other person's elephant. Speak with humility to check our ego and show respect for the other person's point of view. Use language that resonates with their elephant to make sure our message really lands on our conversation partner. Acknowledge their point of view to make them feel heard and appreciated. Focus on common ground to remind yourselves of what you do agree on. Troubleshooting when things go off the rails. To recap, there's a 3-step strategy we learned to communicate effectively. Establish your goal, listen to the other person's elephant, and then speak to their elephant. So far, we've been discussing how to be an effective communicator based on one major assumption, that the other person in the conversation is remaining calm, reasonable, and cooperative. We mentioned that if you approach disagreements treating the other person with unwavering respect, they're likely to reciprocate. The key word is usually. There are exceptions, and we'll address those now. When you're at an impasse, you might find yourself in a situation when you've listened and spoken to each other's elephants to the best of your ability, but neither of you are willing to budge. If you keep working through this disagreement, it's likely that you'll start to get frustrated with each other. Imagine you and Alex have found yourself in this situation. It's possible you're never going to see completely eye to eye on the issue, and this is natural. People will inevitably have different views on important issues, but that doesn't mean we need to hate one another. In these situations, our disagreements often reflect differences in our core values. This is likely why both parties feel so strongly about their views and are so unwilling to change their mind. But rather than avoiding these core values, it can actually be productive to name your differences, to identify the values at the root of your disagreement. By describing the core values driving your differences in opinion, you can gain a clear understanding of why you disagree. This in turn can help you accept the disagreement. Let's try naming your differences with Alex. As a reminder, the last thing he said in our conversation was, "The way I see it, the career boost women would get from receiving this extra training in public speaking is really valuable. It outweighs any harm that might be caused by sending the message that women need extra help in order to succeed." What core values seem to be at the root of Alex's opinion? Refer to the list above and write them down now. Next, what core values are driving your own belief? Refer to the list above and write those down now. It's important to keep in mind that you and Alex may actually emphasize the same moral foundations, but you might rely on them in different ways. For example, maybe one of you favors giving equal treatment to all people, while the other favors ensuring equal outcomes for all people. This reflects that you both strongly value the same moral foundation, fairness, but you're applying it differently. While you may never see eye to eye, you can recognize the person you disagree with is advocating for their own deeply held values, just as you are doing with your own. How might the differences in your core values explain why you two disagree about women-only workshops? If you find it difficult to name differences between you and Alex's values, you can describe how you and Alex have different predictions about the practical effects of women-only workshops. Answer this question now. Thanks for responding. If you and Alex can talk openly about how your moral worldviews differ, then you can see why this issue puts you so at odds with each other. It can also help you find a productive place where you can agree to disagree. When things are getting heated, imagine you've tried to explain to Alex why you respectfully disagree with his stance on women-only workshops, but despite your best efforts, Alex's face is becoming flushed and his brow is furrowed in an expression of indignation. How likely is it that you'll be able to move forward in a constructive dialogue with Alex? Write down one of the following: "It's totally hopeless, there's no recovering from this point," or "It's possible to move forward if we choose our moves carefully," or "Totally likely, I don't see any problems here." That's right. Alex's appearance and raised voice indicate he's feeling some strong emotions, but it's still possible to continue the dialogue if we're strategic about our next steps. We've learned that we can control our emotions and rein in our elephants by pressing pause and taking a moment to cool off. The same principle applies when someone else's elephant has taken charge. If we can help them take a moment to cool off, their rider may be able to regain control. If you think the conversation has started to go off the rails, you can do two things. First, acknowledge the other person's feelings, telling them, "It looks like you're starting to get upset," or "I can tell this is making you feel angry." This shows you care how they feel. Second, suggest taking a break. This can work even if you're the one getting riled up and you want to make sure your rider stays in control. You can try phrases like, "Maybe we could both take a few moments to cool off," or "It seems like we're getting preheated, let's take a breather," or "Can we press pause on this and circle back later?" Pressing pause requires the other person's cooperation. There may be conversations where you try this out, but the other person's elephant keeps charging forward anyway. For example, imagine you ask Alex if the other two can pause for a moment to cool off, but he replies, "How dare you tell me I need to calm down? You don't really care about what's best for women at all. You're a misogynist." Whoa there, that escalated quickly. At this point, it seems like Alex is totally seething with contempt, which remember is indignation and anger and disgust mixed together. Which of these describes your first impulse of how to respond to Alex? Be honest. It's important to get to know your own elephant if you want to be able to rein them in properly. Would you shut down and walk away? Or would you yell right back to defend yourself, or something else? Write your response now. When they resorted to shouting or insults. It's a common impulse. It's so tempting to respond with contempt when people dish it out to us, but as we've learned, this will only perpetuate the cycle. Alex's outburst is a perfect opportunity to practice breaking the cycle of contempt. Remember, you have the power to choose how to respond instead of giving into the impulse to shut down or retaliate. When someone steps out of line by throwing names, labels, or insults at you, you don't have to stoop to their level. Instead, you can take the high road by treating them with kindness, patience, and empathy. To take the high road, reassure them that you are listening and care about their point of view. For example, you might think back to what they shared before their outburst and paraphrase their view back to them to make them feel heard and respected. Are you saying I should let this person just walk all over me? No. We're applying the skill of listening with strength. We don't have to react to everything the other person says. If you give the other person a taste of their own medicine by insulting them back, you've let them goad you into bad behavior. As Viktor Frankl taught us, we always have the power to choose our own way instead of letting other people drag us into our own actions we may regret. Your choices determine who you are. You are the heir of your actions. So taking the high road demonstrates willpower and moral integrity in the face of other people's errors. It might just inspire the other person to choose a better path in their future conversations. And besides, if you remain calm, cool, and collected, even if you have a bad argument, you'll seem like you're winning the argument because the other person's so out of control, it'll make it seem like they're losing the argument to bystanders. Let's try this out with Alex. He says this in an outburst. Which of the following best represents the way to respond to him? I'm not the misogynist here, you're the misogynist. Or, how dare you raise your voice at me, I won't tolerate that behavior. Or, Alex, I hear what you're saying about the career boost women could get from these women-only workshops. Or, this conversation isn't worth continuing if you're going to act this way. What's the best response? Excellent job. You listened with strength to Alex's insult and you chose to take the high road instead of reciprocating to more shouts and insults. To review what we've learned about the troubleshooting conversations that have gone awry, we can try three tactics. Name your differences and core values at the root of your disagreement. Press pause and take a break from the conversation to calm down. Take the high road if they've started shouting or insulting you. Let's wrap up by summarizing. In difficult conversations, our elephant can get the better of us. It can lead us to behave in ways that feel good in the moment but actually hinder our goals. But we have the power to put writers in charge to make strategic and intentional choices about how we act during disagreements. Our writer can adopt a powerful strategy, focus on winning over the other person's elephant. This will enable us to set the tone for a respectful conversation while preparing ourselves to speak and act in ways that will land well with the other person's intuitive emotional side. 3 steps for effective communication are: establish your goal, listen to understand the other person's elephant, speak to their elephant. Final life hacks. Set goals for your conversations. The next time you find yourself about to express your point of view in a conversation or on social media, take a moment to decide, what do I really hope to accomplish in this conversation or post? Then make sure you craft your message in a way that advances your goal. 2, perfect your paraphrasing. Try listening to someone speaking on YouTube, on a podcast, or the TV news in 15-second increments. Pause to restate their own words back to them. Once you're comfortable, you can work up to summarizing longer increments of speech. 3, speak the other person's language. And the next week, when you come across an article, social media post, or comment you disagree with, try to identify the moral foundations that might be guiding that person's view. Then challenge yourself to write out how you'd express your view on that topic using their moral foundations. 4, take the high road. The next time you come across a social media post or comment that you find insulting, resist the urge to reply by insulting them back. Challenge yourself to compose a response that acknowledges the reasonable aspects of that person's point of view. If you can't find anything kind to say to them, just don't respond. Finally, let's write about the key takeaways we learned from this lesson, and let's write about how in the upcoming week we're going to implement these key takeaways in our life. 3 to 5 sentences for each. Be specific. Remember, the specific is sticky, the general is boring. Specific examples. Be authentic here. Write well. Good luck.